Dr. Thompson was supposed to be here? Good afternoon and welcome to our first meeting of September. Appreciate we have a couple people in the audience, and I'm sure we have a few people watching us on our Electric City Television. Our invocation tonight will be given by Councilmember Don Chapman, and respects to the flags will be given by Councilmember Jeff Roberts. Please rise.
Please join me in bowing your head in prayer. Our Father, as we gather here for our last meeting this summer season, we give thanks for the many blessings that you show us each and every day, however large or small, and ask that you continue to watch over and guide us. As with this and all times, Father, we give thanks for our freedom. We pray for those who sacrifice so much to protect it, such as the men and women, both far and near, past and present, who serve and continue to serve this country in the armed forces, so that we may be able to gather here tonight. Locally, we pray for and give thanks for our public safety departments. We pray for each officer and firefighter as they serve to protect our city each day. We also give thanks for each city department as they work hard to serve this community, and pray for each one's safety. And now, Father, we give guidance for our management team as well as this council here tonight. May that all we say and do be in the best interest of our citizens, our city, but most of all, may it be pleasing in your eyes. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The minutes of the August 26th meeting have been distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Not hearing any, do I have a motion to approve? First by Mr. Harbin, second by Mr. John Roberts. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The minutes of August 26, pass unanimously. There are 4 items of old business, and the first item is request second reading of ordinance 19-09 to amend the City of Anderson zoning ordinance by adding language relating to small wireless facility. Ms. McEwen.
Mayor and Council, this is second reading, and Maurice McKenzie, Planning and Development Director, will present this item to you. Maurice?
Yes. Thank you. As Mr. McEwen mentioned, this is before you tonight for second reading, consideration for second reading. This goes back with you to November of last year. We had a work session with the Municipal Association to introduce this topic to you regarding small wireless facilities. So we learned more about it then. We did realize that we needed to adopt some because this type of technology is obviously upon us now. So this has been discussed, and as a matter of fact, at the last council meeting on August 26th, prior to that, we held another work session to discuss things further and to go over the draft guidelines. And at that work session and at the council meeting on August 26th, it was approved on first reading. There were a few changes recommended in that, so we did make those changes that you can see highlighted in your attached ordinance, but those changes mainly clarified some language regarding timelines as far as keeping things consistent, adding the word business days, and reducing some timeframes on approval to make it more friendly. We also clarified some language regarding co-location to make it workable for all parties involved. And also, we added language regarding the requirement of a performance bond, and we looked at language in other communities, so we kind of adopted language that was typical in other places. So those are the changes that were made per your request at the last council meeting, so we do recommend you adopt this on second reading.
Thank you, sir. Questions, comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Just got a few comments I'd like to make. I think we made some good strides from our last meeting to this meeting, but on page 8, I would like to kind of see us reduce the, when the applicant, if there's changes, they resubmit, there's 30 business days. I'd like to see that maybe get cut into 15 business days, because carriers, it's very important that they get their network up and running, as quick as possible. And right now, they have 10 days to get it, we have 10 days, which is 2 weeks to review an application, to deem it complete. And we have another 6 weeks, which is 30 business days, to find out if there's any problems with the application once we receive it. And then possibly another 6 weeks to re-review any submittals. So that's 14 weeks before they could possibly start construction, which is a very long time in the telecom industry for getting things up and going. So would really like to see that the re-review on, I think it's the third paragraph, is paragraph 4 be cut from 30 business days down to 15 business days. And then it would reciprocate under the review deadline from 30 business days to 15 business days, because I think changes are very minute when they come back in. And I don't believe that the city of Anderson will sit on applications for that period of time, but possibly, we could sit on it till the very last day. And, but I know it wouldn't happen, but again, would just like to see those 2 changes made. And then, on page 13, where we talked about the co-location, and, I know I brought up about 2 additional carriers, and, yes, these boxes can accommodate 2 additional carriers, but it can only accommodate right now 3G, 4G, 4G, 5G. I think the thrust of it is 5G. That's what everybody wants to get to. Well, right now, the technology is not there for 2 5G carriers to go into the same box. It will happen. It's going to happen soon, but right now, it's not there. You can have, like I said, 4G and 5G. And so what I would ask is maybe that, because I don't know when AT&T or Verizon may submit their applications, but if that technology isn't there where they can combine 2 5G carriers in the same box, then I think that we would put it back on the applicant to say, hey, demonstrate to us why it can't work, with 2 5G carriers. And if the technology is not there, then I think they can put a box in with just 1 5G carrier in there, if that makes sense.
Not really, but if it makes sense to you. But, and I joke, but Tony's business is that I would lean toward, Maurice, David, Andrew, comments?
Yeah, I mean, we're open to the changes, from the 30 to the 15 days. I mean, staff's open to that amendment. And then also what you're speaking to on, page 13, co-location. I was reading the last sentence here and see how we could change that. Give me just a second.
But again, I think we're asking them right now to do something that's not technically feasible right now. And I think until that technology arrives, it's unfair to whoever the customer is to ask them to put a box that has 2 5G carriers in it. The technology is not there.
Right. So to amend that, I think you just take that first sentence where it says "and 2 additional carriers if technically feasible," and just add that language.
Yeah.
If technically feasible, would that work?
Yeah, feasible. And then the last comment on page 14, under the abandonment of the facilities, we talked about the 90 days. I think if we moved that to 120 days, and then under section C, and then just say that, instead of the city may direct the wireless carrier, that the wireless carrier should take down an existing, if they abandon that box, then they need to take it down within 120 days, because you just don't want to have utility poles with blank boxes sitting out there. It's just going to be clutter up, the vision down the street. And I think 120 days is more suitable. And if AT&T were to abandon their box, they're not going to leave it for T-Mobile to come use. They're going to take their equipment and go, and somebody else has got to put their equipment in anyway.
And you're saying, Mr. Stewart, in section C, page 14, the 90 to the 120, and
Yes, sir.
okay.
And then that they would be required to remove it
Change may,
120 days of abandonment.
change may to shall, would that work?
Shall. And I think I spoke with our representative from AT&T, and he's good with it as well.
We concur with those changes.
Good, thanks. Any other comments, questions? Ms. Chapman?
It's more of a question to council. I don't know if anybody else received, it was kind of some random emails, or I don't know about, they almost looked like they were blanket emails from,
They were.
and we couldn't tell if it was from a local person, but,
I got a copy here. So we did get so it was a mass mailing that was taking place, and they were just randomly finding people, and even accidentally sent them to some city staff thinking they were council members. But the address, let me give you a little info here. But the short of it is this: is that the municipal association recognized that this was happening statewide. And their general counsel provided a response to it.
okay.
And the response was this: that federal law preempts local regulation of health and environmental effects on radio frequency emissions. And specifically, U.S. Code provides no state or local government may regulate the placement, construction, or modification, so forth, regarding the environmental effects of that. So it's preempted by federal law. So their advice to any local government or representative, local representative that was contacted, or state representative, was to refer them to Congress or the FCC because we are preempted.
Okay, and I just want to make you kind of comment on that, because if somebody else, in the public got that information, it made it sound like it was something negative, so.
Yeah, exactly. And with this being above us and above the state level, there was some discussion at the local level that we have control over that, and we just don't.
Okay.
So.
I didn't hear what your last comments were.
Yeah, there was in the email that was sent out, the mass email that was sent out. There was discussion in that email that as you guys as a municipality, as a city council, have the ability to regulate this, and you don't have that ability. It's regulated at the federal level. We're actually prohibited from regulating it.
But also, you can, make it part of your applications too, that there's a study called what they call the non-ionizing emission radiations. A lot of municipalities use like a 6-page report that, if you got somebody on staff who can read it, talks about all the decibel levels and the electromagnetic radiation that goes out. A lot of municipalities, want that. They keep it on file. That way, if somebody like these constituents come in, they can just pull out and say, hey, here's something that's been certified by a RF engineer that says, hey, we're in compliance with everything that's going on.
Right, and also in the municipal association provides some additional information too, saying that that the FCC is based on their 1996 radio frequency limitations, and while they reviewed it, they have denied any changes based on the electromagnetic radiation and the wireless non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation. That's a mouthful, but anyways, so we're working on municipal association with this issue, but at this point, we don't have any ability to regulate that, and their suggestion, nor should we. So
You
Good.
don't want to.
Anything else?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
First by Mr. Harvey,
Second.
second by Mr. Chapman. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously on the second and final reading. Our next item of old business is request second reading of ordinance 19-10, amending section 42-263-2 of the city code to provide for the prohibition of smoking in public places. Mr. McEwen.
yes, again, this is second reading. We have some good discussion on this on first reading, and it's an extension to the amendment of our city code. And Andrew Strickland, our assistant city manager, will be presenting this item to you.
Like City Manager McEwen mentioned, this is an amendment to our current smoking ordinance, which currently prohibits smoking in healthcare facilities across the city. This would extend that prohibition to Main Street, between Greenville Street to the north and, sorry about that, and Franklin Street to the south, and within 25 feet of the right-of-way of Main Street as well, along side streets. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Questions, comments? Mr. Chapman?
The ordinance doesn't say anything about what the fine will be or how it will be imposed, or, I know there was some discussion that it would be it would not be a blue ticket, it would be like a regular city
Municipal codes.
municipal code.
City code violation, that's right.
If you could explain that, Frankie, maybe of how,
The original ordinance, I think, provides for, like a $10 to $25 fine. This just amended the healthcare facility ordinance, and it provides for the fine. And for it to be a civil fine of $10 to $25.
so if somebody, because I think originally, maybe the chief, it was gonna be a blue ticket, but then if that, then you have a
It would not be a blue, be the uniform ordinance, something.
right, which would not be a criminal fine.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
So it
correct.
wouldn't go on your record.
It'd be like a
that you got-
parking ticket, or,
Very similar to a parking ticket, that's right.
Actually, this on first offense?
and,
This on first offense?
yes, on each.
This is each subsequent offense as well.
So $25 if you disobey the ordinance.
That's right. You can keep puffing, you keep collecting fines. Yes, ma'am.
If what now?
You just keep collecting fines if you get additional tickets.
I'll add to that. I mean, if you just blatantly disregard an officer, there's also a code section for that too, failure to obey officer's directions. So, I mean, they could cite you for that, but
So if someone is stopped for smoking, he said, well, I really didn't know you had an ordinance about this. And the code enforcement officer is gonna say, well, yeah, but this is $25.
well, the main part of it is education. So, you know, in 99% of the cases, unless somebody's just has been out too late, to put it nicely, then, you know, somebody's going to comply and just go over there and to another location and do that. So, I mean, I just don't see us running into those issues.
Good, thanks.
I do have one.
Ms. Lockett?
What you're saying is that, you know, we're not going to give any kind of warning to the folks that have,
No,
what I'm saying, we have a lot of folks to come in from the outside, especially with the place that we have at the Rand Park. And if we have no warning, you're going to, folks that are coming in from Greenville or Spartanburg or those.
No, they would be asked to just go to another location to or put it out. And so that's typically how officers handle all these types of situations. However, if they didn't, or they're a repeat offender, you know, they just go down the street and they're still on Main Street, then they'll most likely get a ticket, but it's still at the officer's discretion.
and this ordinance wouldn't go into effect until November 1st. That'd give us time to educate business owners and hang up signs around the community as well, at appropriate intervals, just to get the word out as best we can.
I was talking to Mayor Crenshaw in Pendleton, and they enacted this, and he said that, you know, it was more so the education piece, but what he was surprised, which I guess people from surrounding communities that already enacted this, like for Greenville, they already have been educated. So they're not gonna come here and, yeah, and light up or vape. I'm more interested now about vaping with the health
Big problem.
crisis that we're having throughout the country. Good questions. Anything else? Ms. Roberts, Jeff Roberts,
I brought up the issue,
Virginia, Tom?
extend it to any tobacco product, tobacco spitting, and
We're open to doing so. The staff's open to doing so.
this is just as offensive as blowing smoke in someone else's face.
Hmm.
So
I didn't hear your question.
extend it to all tobacco products, to chewing tobacco, snuff.
Still tobacco?
Yes, ma'am.
There are people that chew tobacco.
Ms. Stewart?
Do our officers currently issue uniform? They don't issue uniform service, some do, they do.
They do carry that, and they do have the ability to do that because there are a lot of municipal codes that they don't just issue the state uniform ordinance for, or the state uniform codes for. So they do have that, and they have the ability to do that. And our code enforcement officers obviously do as well. So it's nothing new for them to do that.
And I guess code enforcement, it's kind of different than code enforcement where, you know, where you gotta write the guy and then you gotta wait so many days. So, but this would just be like a ticket right there on the spot.
Yeah, and you know, and you just like a park ticket. But with the code enforcement side, you know, the council decide to give them the ability to abate it. abate the nuisance. But in this case, and along with many other code sections in our municipal code, you would just write a citation if they didn't comply with you.
Good.
So, I mean, a lot of times, just even on a criminal offense, say we get, in a chase, sometimes municipal code violations are stacked on top of the state charges as well. That's happens fairly often, so.
So let's just say you rack up 15 $25 tickets, you issue a warrant for their arrest, what happens? If they say, well, I'm just not gonna pay it,
You're due in court, and then there's a process for that. They can be tried in their absence, and also though we have to receive an opinion from the South Carolina Supreme Court, the justice, that you're supposed to continue to notify them so many times, and if they just fail to come to court, then ultimately you try them in their absence, and it goes on their record, not on their criminal record, but that they owe the city.
I guess in education, there'd be some signs saying no smoking, in this area, something like that. Or would there be?
You want to speak to
No
that?
smoking in this area?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So our Economic Development Department, Kimberly Spears and her folks are looking at the best method to handle that and get the word out, and that will include signage.
Further questions? Good questions.
I move that we adopt the ordinance as read.
Have a first by Mr. Lockridge. Second by Mr. John Roberts.
As a point of order, let me ask one question. Did the council want to consider Mr. Jeff Roberts' amendment to the ordinance as far as all tobacco products?
I would like to see that in there. Yes.
So you amend your,
I would amend it.
I would also like to say, I would like to see it there, but I also consider this a first step in this direction. So
No doubt.
if it didn't happen now, it could happen at a later time, but I would like to see it.
Why we can't add it now at this point.
hopefully we get to a point to be a city-free smoking area citywide.
I would agree. Where we at on it?
So, Mayor, we would need to motion to amend the ordinance to include all tobacco products language, and then you can just vote on it from there.
Yes. So, Mr. Lockridge, would you amend your,
We would like to amend it so that it would include all tobacco products.
have that amendment as a first? Well, you have to second it.
Second.
Mr. Roberts, John Roberts. Further discussion?
One more.
Chapman?
Just want to make sure that, we had discussion that we were gonna, because we feel like what it's gonna do is gonna push people outside the boundary of where they are now, and then we're gonna have the issue of that. Are we gonna move ashtrays or some type of receptacle so that they're
Correct.
People are-
We've talked about that internally, and that would be our plan.
excellent? Thanks.
Be in a minute. Yeah. So, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Our third item of old business is request consideration of an ordinance to annex and zone to general commercial 0.4 acres located at 3526 Clemson Boulevard and adjacent 0.01 acres located at the corner of Clemson Boulevard and Fritz Drive. Mr. McEwen?
The council read this on first reading, and or actually continued it. And Maurice McKenzie, we've been working with the developer back and forth, and so we haven't given any updates for you on this project. And Maurice McKenzie will provide those updates to you. And I understand the developer's here as well.
This one's for 3526 Clemson Boulevard, correct? The annexation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Mr. McKenzie, go ahead with the annexation.
We'll go with that one.
Yeah,
Thank you
sorry.
so much. We'll go with that one first. The applicant is petitioning to annex and zone to general commercial, about 4/10 of an acre, located at 3526 Clemson Boulevard. The property is undeveloped, and as you can see on your map, it's completely surrounded by the city limits, and all the zoning around it is GC, general commercial. It's the intent of the applicant to combine that with the surrounding property, then subdivide it and construct it commercially. And we expect that to take place pretty soon. Also, with that 4/10 of an acre, there is a little triangular piece of property owned by the city. It's 0.01 acres in the corner, right at Clemson Boulevard and Fritz Drive. And Again, that's city-owned because that was deeded to the city back when Fritz Drive was constructed about 10 years ago for a site triangle. So we think it's an appropriate time to go ahead and annex that while we're working on this. This did go before the Planning Commission last week on September 3rd. They did unanimously recommend approval of this, so the staff recommends approval of this annexation. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you. Questions?
I have one.
Ms. Lockhart?
Why was this not originally annexed in, do you know?
This property, actually, if you remember, it used to be the old transmission shop of some sort. It was there for years. And the owner at the time just never petitioned to annex it.
Okay.
Yeah, now he's coming in now with it, but it's been vacant for several years now.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Yeah, no other reason. They just didn't ever petition to bring it in.
Good question. Mr. Harbin?
Make a motion that approve this annex.
Second.
First by Mr. Harbin, second by Dr. Thompson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously on the second and final reading.
First reading.
First reading, I'm sorry. Had to flip.
Yes.
Watch, I have to have a good mayor pro tem. Okay, our last item of old business is request consideration of an ordinance to rezone 16.82 acres at the northern corner of Glenwood Avenue and Blakely Street from light industrial to R5 single-family residential. Mr. McEwen?
Okay, I was out of order, so my introduction comments from the last one stand on this, and Mr. McKenzie will give you the update.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This did come before you on August 12th, a few weeks ago. And after reviewing this proposal, again, the proposal is to rezone the properties of R5 single-family residential. Is currently zoned LI light industrial. The applicant does construct a subdivision, but once you heard it back on August 12th, there were some questions and concerns regarding housing density, ingress and egress to the site, landscaping, screening, off-street parking, several things like that. So rather than act on it at the time, you voted to continue discussions in order for the applicant to explore these concerns. And since that time, we've been meeting with the applicant. They have made some changes. I do know that the applicant met at Councilman Loppridge's neighborhood group the day after the last council meeting and spoke to several neighbors there as well. But by rezoning it to R5 single-family residential, it would allow a minimum of 5,000 square foot lots. Initially, when this came to you a few weeks ago, the applicant was proposing a 62 lot subdivision. The lots average just over 5,900 square feet. Now, since that meeting, the applicant did reduce the density by 9 lots. Now the subdivision proposal is to reduce it to 53 lots. And that increases the minimum lot size by about 1,000 square feet to 6,900 square feet. So again, went from 62 lots down to 53 lots. That's one of the revisions that's taken place. At the last meeting, you also saw a landscaping plan. It had some landscaping, particularly along the eastern property line. There was which is kind of the top part of your drawing there. It's the side where existing houses on West Wind abut the property. There's a 6-foot privacy fence there and some landscaping. That is to remain. On the northern side of the property, you will see some additional landscaping and a natural vegetation that will remain. That was proposed early on and it's still proposed now. One change that did take place and is concern that you had, really from a buffering standpoint and from an aesthetic standpoint, is the frontage along Glenwood and Blakely. Since that meeting, again, maybe a little easier to see, but they are proposing a 4-foot berm with plantings on top of that berm. And the plantings include hardwood trees and shrubs, and the hardwood trees 3-inch caliper, so larger trees at planting, and also 5-gallon shrubs. And the intent is to have staggered plantings to ultimately have more of an opaque screen there. So that is one change that's taken place since you last saw this on August 12th. Another concern that was raised at the meeting a few weeks ago was a possibility of another subdivision street connecting to Blakely to help alleviate potential traffic along Glenwood. The applicant's engineer did speak with the SEDOT, and they determined that no additional entrance would be allowed on Bleckley Street that would require access through the existing grass median that's on Bleckley. Instead, they said they could have a right turn, right in, right out street, but it was determined that that's really not feasible for a subdivision of this size, particularly with the reduction in lots. But again, they did broach the subject with the DOT, but there was an issue with crossing that landscape median on Bleckley. Another issue that came up at the meeting on August 12th was off-street parking. We have seen in the past, particularly in subdivisions with smaller lots, excessive on-street parking just because the lots are smaller. And the way our current guidelines read, we do say that you must have a minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit. Now, off-street parking spaces may include your garage, and sometimes people don't use their garage for parking, so that can be an issue. So we did discuss this, and the applicant is proposing to address this through some stricter homeowners association guidelines. He's done this in other places, and actually attached in your package are some sample guidelines that he proposes to incorporate into the homeowners association guidelines. Again, that's not enforceable by the city. That would be part of their restrictive covenants, their homeowners association guidelines. Also, what they're proposing to do is, in the R5 zoning district, there's a 15-foot minimum front yard setback. They're proposing to push that back to 20 feet. So those are the changes that have been made since you last saw this back on August 12th. Again, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this at their meeting on August 6th. But since that time, we have seen some changes, some improvements, particularly from the less density aspect of things, and also the improved landscaping and screening. And if this is approved, the preliminary plat will need to go back before Planning Commission for their approval, just the plat itself, not the rezoning, because this has changed since they first saw it. The applicants here, I do believe we have a resident from the neighborhood here as well. But again, any questions for the staff here?
Thank you. Questions, comments? Mr. Jeff Roberts?
I started out with 2 things that I had a question about, but I think I've got a third one as well. In our last discussion, we were concerned about the car pulling into the garage, up to the garage door. Let's say the garage door is closed. You're going to stay several feet off of it just so you don't hit the door. And particularly with longer cars, that 20 feet of setback is not sufficient. So, and my note said that we were talking about 25 feet of setback. Yeah, that's a note I made. That's one.
That was.
It was, yes. And also, second, I don't know if we can, this is part of what we can enforce, but I would like to see a left-hand and right-hand exit lanes coming out of the subdivision. If you notice, I rode by today, the one across the street has that very arrangement. And it just makes for an easier exit if cars start to back up, because essentially now you have a two-way stop right there with cars trying to get out, not so much coming in and getting out. So that's the second. And then the third, and I recall the lady who spoke on behalf of the neighborhood about speeding down Glenwood. And I was wondering if we could look at reducing the speed limit along that stretch, just to give more time for people to get out. So those are my 3 issues.
Yes, you're correct. At that last meeting on August 12th, that was discussed, 25 feet was additional setback. I did confirm with the applicant today that they do have 20 proposed now, so that could be discussed by the applicant shortly. As far as the left-right exit, a good idea. We'll just need to look at the width and make sure that is adequate. Really, all it requires is paint, as long as we have the adequate width. So we'll certainly look into that, and I'll bring this up with the police department, DOT as well, since this is a state road, about the potential to reduce the speed on Glenwood. But that would be a DOT call, but they may be receptive to that.
The speeding limit on that road right now is 34.
Is it 35? I was going to ask that.
at the corner.
Okay. So that could be a reduction to 25 then, yeah. But we'll certainly look into that.
Ms. Chapman?
So, I certainly appreciate the developer's goal in trying to reduce the size of the number of lots, which increases the minimum. I think we had talked about 6,059 is close enough to it that I think it meets the need, and then the average is going to be over that. I agree with Councilman Roberts that I think that from a standpoint, I know the subdivision across the street, we had an issue with it. I too drove by there, took some pictures of some of the cars, and they actually had some of those cars double stacked. And there was actually, I think I shared with you that they were actually, the back end was out in the street where we had from day one, we've had an issue with that particular neighborhood with the houses were pushed so close to the edge of the right of way, they ended up being over the right of way. And my concern with, once you get this completely developed, which I think is going to be a great little neighborhood, that when you get the cars rear end so far out, closer to the street, that kids playing and other cars backing out and other cars going down the road, that may be a safety issue. And that's primarily why we try to keep them off the street or further off the street. And it looks like the lots are certainly deep enough that moving it back 5 more feet to 25 seems reasonable. But again, that's something the developer needs to express.
Good, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead and see what the,
Well, let's go ahead and just gather some more questions here as far as before we ask the developer to come up. Any other concerns or comments in regards to what's in front of us? Okay. Maybe we can get the developer to come up or somebody to come and talk in regards to,
Wesley White.
in
Wesley White,
essence,
the engineer.
the engineer? Okay, thank you.
Wesley White, Ridgewater Engineering, 211 Society Street. A couple of the questions, we did look at the 25-foot setback, but working with the builder, Dan Ryan, in their homes, that 5 feet does create an issue with giving, otherwise we're left with almost no backyard by the time we do that. We're restricted on how deep these lots can be to get, double frontage lots throughout the property. So we have looked at that with them. So we kind of met in the middle. The 15 is a requirement. 20 foot would allow for a car to sit in front of the garage. I understand the concerns, but we did go over that with the builder and felt like 20 was a compromise that we could work with. The entrance location on the DOT, that's something we can bring up with them during the permitting process. That's something they'll have to approve and sign off on, whether they'll allow us a right in, right out as well. Or excuse me, a right turn, left turn. Because I know when we did the one across the street, it actually has a divided median that was supposed to go into it, so that's why it's a little bit bigger. Now, whether DOT will allow us to have a mismatching, we'll have to talk to them about that.
wouldn't that sort of cause a traffic jam right there at the exit or entrance? If you have one car leaving and one car coming in, couldn't that create a big problem for you at that particular point?
How so?
If you have a car leaving, have a car coming in, you don't have enough space for them to get past one another.
You talking about the car turning left in, car turning left out?
Turning left and entering and exiting onto Glenwood.
You talking about with just a two-lane, two-way entrance?
The way it is designed.
Yeah, but like I said, it's limited to 53 houses, so it'll be, minimal. They might have to wait
Give you enough room for both people to come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it'll be DOT requires a minimum 24-foot wide at the for 40 feet back. So.
Yeah.
I think a good compromise and a reasonable compromise on the setback of the parking would be to just offset the garage portion of the structure, not the entire structure.
And like I said, the builder will, we can put in the HOA requirements, that they require to park in their garage kind of thing, but that's, again, something that has to be enforced by the HOA. So.
Right, and as most HOAs, they, unless there's a strict.
Yeah, it depends on who's in charge.
The house that I took a picture for, the city planner, it had 4 cars.
Yeah.
They were double stacked, you know, 'cause, so the lots are 110 feet. It looks like they're all 110 foot deep.
That's, minimum, yes.
All right, so then your 25 foot setback would put you at 85 feet, plus the rear, whatever you get off the rear. So the houses,
10.
so if you do a 20 foot backyard, you would be 65 feet. So the houses are deeper than 65 feet.
That's correct. I think it's 70, and that's without a, you know, so they still want to maintain a backyard. We still have to put drainage structures between the back of the houses, as well as the perimeter houses. Even though there's 25 foot, that buffer was going to, that berm will go into the back of those lots, along with the drainage structures. So we have to make sure we allow for that.
Further questions?
I have a statement to make. I would like to say thank you, first of all, for your concessions that you have made so far. We appreciate that. I regret that we didn't get agreement with the SCDOT to make an exit onto Blakely. I think there's still a problem with having it right there, right in front of that other exit. I think you're going to have a major problem with, at some point in the future, a major problem with traffic right in that specific area at certain times of the day. Not at all times of the day, but at certain times of the day. I am excited about the housing development. I think it's a possibility of being a great addition to my particular ward. I would like to know, is there anybody here in the audience that would like to speak for the community? You do? Yes, sir. If you'd come down, give your name and where you live.
My name's Mike Hall, and I live at 901 Glenwood.
Yes, sir.
I think the concessions that they're making is helping, is really helping the neighborhood across the street. It does seem like it's a problem with cars and crowding, as far as if you look down the road, like what y'all were talking about in the road. And it would be nice if it was another entrance or exit. But are they talking about the Blakely? You got the Blakely Street now, and then the old Blakely Street.
Yes, sir, but neither, the new Blakely Street that's running down through there?
Yes.
I've already requested SCDOT go into that area, or already requested that be an exit point. But because there's a median in there on Blakely Street, they will not allow that. So SCDOT will not allow an entrance or exit on Blakely Street. So the exit's gonna have to be on Glenwood.
But what I'm saying is, what about the old Blakely Street? Because the lot runs, the property runs up to where the old Blakely Street used to come out.
I think the upper part of that lot, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. White, yeah, that upper part of that lot that goes into the old Blakely Street, is that not kind of a watery area?
There is a creek that has to be crossed, as well as there's limited distance between the intersection of the old Blakely and Blakely.
That would be a problem, I think, for the builder, to be able to go in that direction.
Right, and just to clarify for the record, the DOTs, they would allow a right-in, right-out only onto Blakely, but that would be difficult for a subdivision to limit turns to right-in and right-out only. They just won't allow a full access.
I got you. We understand.
All right, but that's about it, I guess.
All right.
Well, we appreciate your comment, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart?
Just curious, how long, you know, I kind of like the idea that Councilman Roberts and Chapman had about offsetting that garage, maybe, you know, 5 foot back instead of having it. I know you're looking at maybe a 20-yard backyard, a 20-foot backyard, but on one side it may be 15 and 20 on one side because the garage being offset. How soon do you think that we could get an answer back from the builder if he would be willing to do that or not? Because I think it's very critical of getting those cars off of that street.
I didn't hear that.
I think we can get it pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly?
If we can make this part of our acceptance of just simply allowing the garage entrance to be 25 feet back,
Good with
the
that?
rest of the house could be 20.
Can I bring up one other thing that Jeff's not here, but when talking to Jeff about the setbacks, the city does not allow roof overhangs in the front setback or the side setbacks. So just keep that in mind that although it's 20 feet, if you've got a 1.5 to 2 foot front roof overhang in the front, that's an additional couple feet that's already going to be taken up by the roof overhang. So just bring that up, make you aware of that as well.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I didn't think that overhangs and things such as architectural features.
They're limited, but they're definitely not required the side setback in the front. You're limited on what you can put in the front.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I follow up?
Yep, you can.
So just for clarification, Mr. McKenzie, the street right of way, the street itself, curb to curb, is generally 25 feet, outside of curb to outside of curb. And then there's 50 feet of right of way through the middle of that, so it adds another 12 and a half feet.
Right,
That's the same thing that's across the street, and that's how we end up with 32 and a half feet if we stuck to the 20. But if you double stack a car, that's how the back of the car gets put out onto the road.
right, because the road, yeah, like you're right, the road width itself, curb to curb, is 24 feet of asphalt. That's what, 12 feet per lane.
Right.
So then you go out for the 50 feet right of way. So, excuse me.
So what's the pleasure of the council?
I would like to go ahead and see that we go ahead and adopt this and see if we can get a answer from the builder concerning that other problem before the other meeting. I would like to go ahead and go ahead and pass this, consideration to rezoning from industrial, light industrial to single-family residential.
So I hear that as a first from Mr. Lockridge.
Reading or what?
It's a first reading. Yep.
First reading.
Second.
Second by Dr. Thompson. Any further discussion, Mr. Roberts, Jeff Roberts?
Can we also include some sort of investigation with DOT about the left and right turn lanes exiting for our next meeting?
I think they were considering that, yeah.
I mean, they're not going to give us approval without a permit, but we can have that discussion.
Okay.
Okay. I can go with it.
Anything else?
Just curious,
Mr. Harvey?
what is city manager, our current law on street parking?
Street parking. I mean, if there's not a prohibited area, you can park on the street. So how DOT sees it though, and talking to their traffic engineer, is if it's like on Glenwood, there would be areas of Glenwood that you could not park because it would be blocking the lane of travel. And so
Occasion, I'm sure, Bellevue is a very high traveled road, and sometimes people park on Bellevue.
yeah, so if it's when I've talked to them DOT before on this issue regarding the regulation of their streets, if it is blocking the lane of travel, and therefore you have to go around the car and go in the opposite lane of travel, then it's not allowed, and the police could cite that. However, on some of your wider roads and that type of thing, it's allowed. So
Probably Mr. Lockridge and I could probably, this is the house on O'Neill that was built new, and the driveway is about that long. I mean, it's not enough to even park a car. But anyway, I digress. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously on the first reading. Have a couple, 4 or 5 items of new business. And our first item of new business is request consideration of a appointment to the Accommodations ATAX Advisory Committee. Ms. McEwen.
Yes, the first 2 items here of new business are appointments to commissions and boards. And Kimberly Spears, our Economic Development Director, will present the ATAX Advisory Committee appointment to you.
We have one vacancy to fill on the Tax Advisory Committee. We need to fill this unexpired term from the lodging industry as a representative to the committee. We'd like to nominate Dwayne Bose. He's expressed an interest in serving on this committee and has been recommended by the staff to fill the unexpired term through December 31st, 2021. Dwayne is the Area Director of Sales and Marketing for Paragon Hotels. He also serves on the Anderson Chamber Board of Directors and has been active in a lot of different initiatives downtown. I'd like to put that name.
I thank you. Dwayne's a good choice. Any comments, questions?
Make a motion, we accept it as proposed.
Have it
For his service.
first by Mr. Chapman, second by Mr. Locker. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you, ma'am. Our second item of new business is request consideration of appointments to the Board of Architectural Review, Planning Commission, and Board of Zoning Appeals. Ms. McEwen.
All right, and this is within Mr. McKenzie's purview, and he will present these appointments to you.
Thank you. It is time to make reappointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals, Board of Architectural Review, and the Planning Commission. And we have several members, their terms are expiring, and they do wish to be reappointed for another 4 years. As you know, we are certainly appreciative of the time commitment they have, and they have served the city well. So we do recommend a reappointment of the following members for Planning Commission: Herbert Irvin, Carrie Strider, David Seegers. For the Board of Architectural Review, Amanda Noble, Mary Lou Gambrell, John Stathakis, and Andy Hall. And for the Board of Zoning Appeals, Ellen Martin, Peter Perdomo, and Kent Anderson. And in addition to those reappointments, we are also recommending the appointment of a person for the position of the architecture design position on the Board of Architectural Review. Keep in mind that on the Board of Architectural Review, there are certain positions that are by occupation or field of expertise, and in this particular one, it is a vacant position for the architecture design. We have received interest from Billy Zion, who is an architect inside the city. He meets all the requirements for appointments. So, in addition to reappointing the 3 members for Planning Commission, 4 members for BAR, and the 3 members for the Board of Zoning Appeals, we also recommend the approval of Billy Zion to the Board of Architectural Review. Any questions?
Questions, comments? Mr. Harvey?
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate all these folks serving on all these committees, and I know Billy Zion. And I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
First by Mr. Harvin, second by Mr. Lockridge. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to say one thing. These folks work a good bit. They get no kind of pat on the back or anything. They get a lot of and they probably appreciate all that they do, and we appreciate their hard work. It's one of those thankless jobs. Just have to do what you have to do.
Public service. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those appointments pass unanimously. Our third item of new business is request consideration of an ordinance for equip lease purchase agreement not exceeding $855,000. Ms. McEwen?
Okay, as we again dive into this fiscal year, the next three items on the agenda are all financial management related as far as issuance of debt service for various projects and for various funds. Mario Martin in a second will go over that. These were budgeted and each of them was discussed in the May and June work sessions of council and approved in the budget. Some of these are steps just to get it going. Also want to recognize Mike Burns, bond counsel is with us, that puts our bonds together, who does the underwriting and gets it ready for us. And he's us with Burr and Foreman LLP, which used to be Monair. They've recently been acquired and or merged. And so he's here as well to answer any legal questions that you may have. A lot of legal details to put together in these. But Margo Martin will give you a summary for each of these, starting with item 3.
Thank you.
All right, so the first item is we are requesting first reading of an ordinance authorizing an equipment lease purchase agreement not exceeding $855,000. As David mentioned, the staff presented when we were doing our capital modeling and budgeting needs to council in May and June, and a detailed list of the requested equipment is attached. As we discussed in the spring, a lot of the equipment at Public Works is extremely old. We're replacing equipment from 1995, 2003, 1993, 1997. So I think in the budget process, we did express the need that the Public Works Division would able to provide more efficient service to the citizens with some updated and properly working equipment. The staff is recommending that using the equipment lease purchase agreement to finance the equipment replacement. The estimated annual debt service payment is going to be $187,000 a year. The debt service payments are included in the budget. The 187 is based on 5 years at 3%. So we are requesting approval of first reading of the ordinance authorizing the equipment lease not to exceed $855 on first reading.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Questions, comments? Ms. Stewart?
Just so, all the equipment that we see in attachment A, that's equipment that we're planning on leasing for this $855,000.
Well, we're actually buying it. We just call it, the financing tool is called an equipment lease, but we're actually buying it.
Would that answer my question? Because I was just asking myself, why aren't we leasing 2 lawnmowers? You know, why are we leasing a metal building? You know, if we're purchasing it, you know, it made no sense to me.
It's a government terminology for this type of borrowing.
Okay. That's my question is good.
Okay.
Everything government's just a little bit different.
Any other questions, comments? Ms. Roberts, Jeff Roberts?
I'm certainly in favor of keeping good equipment on hand. Did we find ourselves getting behind on equipment replacement? This is a lot of equipment.
Yeah, so looking back at the fleet, we do keep up with our fleet. Is you know, we have quite a large fleet. We do well maintain them. I mean, so we do try to use them till you know they're end of life essentially. But looking back at from my time being here, I mean, you did go through a recession, and during the period of recession, there wasn't the ability to really buy this type of equipment and catch up. And so over the last couple of years, we've been catching up on a lot of what we call this rolling stock in our police cars. You've seen the fleet. Right. You probably really noticed that too, the fleet really changing and the Crown Victorians phasing out. But there was a period of time that during the recession, you just weren't able to really keep up with that schedule of personnel. But we do have a nice capital fund now, and it is growing as we bring in more population, more households are paying that. And so this lease purchase is being funded by the capital replacement fund. This gives us a good opportunity to buy them in bulk and get us up to speed.
It just seemed like a lot of equipment coming due all of a sudden.
And what I typically like to do is financial management with this type of equipment is you know, while we will pay a good bit in cash, you know, you've seen us bring forth other cars and trucks before you in cash, but times when you're there to purchase more equipment. The best example is the fire trucks. That's not something you would just pay in cash for. You know, the last time I think it was $1.2 million that we paid for that. I think we got a year left on that. And so when that rolls off, we'll be ready to buy 2 more fire trucks. That's a good mechanism to do it. So.
And this money is in the capital replacement fund budget.
Yes, ma'am. It's all budgeted and that you saw in your budget presented to you.
Any other questions? First by Dr. Thompson. Second by Mr. John Roberts. You got something?
Quick question.
Yes.
The previous, council meeting, we approved, purchase of a dump truck. This,
No, that was paid out of cash, out of the capital funds rolling stock cash.
so we, right,
I mean, so we have cash and then we have borrowing. So that was paid out of their cash that was budgeted to pay.
So that was one that we were able to earmark, into the capital fund just to pay in cash. And then, then we're putting in the debt service of the 187,000 into the capital fund too to pay for the bulk of this equipment, so.
So we had about 350 in cash that we were gonna spend out of the capital fund this year, and then 855 in borrowing.
Now, honestly, you can slice and dice it different ways. I mean, you could have pulled the motors out and said we're gonna pay for that in cash, but.
but that being said, this list of 855,000, that doesn't mean we have to spend it all. So if we.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
We can negotiate quantity buying with this much equipment through certain, dealers.
Right. So
We may spend less than this.
correct, and we hope so, but.
These are
They
estimated.
are estimates off the state contracts that are pending out there, but those do change, and, I would expect, many of them to be less.
Okay.
That's why we're not exceeding and also the estimated payment of $187,000. Did I see a hand down there?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Harvey?
This is for, Dr. Thompson, 'cause she must not have thought about it, but we're purchasing all this nice equipment, so we can't keep kicking the can down the road too far about the public works facility where we're gonna put $855,000 equipment.
And I do notice much of this will be going to Public Works, help them do a better job.
That's right.
You know, just don't kick the can down the road too far on that project.
So we'll be talking about that at our retreat.
And I think even to Jeff Roberts' point, when you look at what our general fund budget was 15, 20 years ago and what it is now,
Yes.
that allows you to catch up on that. And we actually, I think, kind of got stuck in 2008 for a couple of years, but the budget's grown. The general fund budget's grown. Good point, Jeff. No other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
All right, take it away, Marta.
Okay, so the next item is a resolution authorizing the City of Anderson to reimburse certain expenditures made prior to the issuance of special obligation bonds, hospitality fee pledge not to exceed $8.5 million. In April, I know the recreation plan was presented, and then we discussed this again in the budget work sessions of the Recreation Center Phase 3 Fields, Pavilions, Greenways, and the Whitner Creek Greenway construction project, which also includes part of Lindley Park construction. We estimate those costs to be about $7.8 million. We are asking for a resolution to reimburse costs incurred prior to the financing. We are not at the point where we're ready to actually go out and borrow the money. We are still waiting on cost estimates, engineering, design, planning like that. So we are doing a not to exceed amount of $8.5 million to help kind of cover the estimated cost. Once the funding is completed, we estimate the annual debt service to be an estimated $703,000 based on a 15-year borrowing at 4%. The hospitality fund currently does not have any outstanding debt. The city last issued a special obligation bond when it built the rec center. It paid that off last year. That annual debt service at the time was $586,000. So we are requesting approval of a resolution authorizing the City of Anderson to reimburse for those expenditures made prior to the issuance of these special obligation bonds.
Thank you. Question?
So, what are we asking the hospitality to reimburse?
What we're actually doing now is any cost incurred.
What is that? How much is that?
Well, we haven't incurred any yet, but if we have a designing, engineering costs, things that we need to know to get a true estimate before we go out to bid, we want the hospitality fund to be reimbursed for those costs. That's what this resolution's asking for. We're not asking to borrow $7 million right now. We're just asking that any costs we incur, we can get reimbursed.
So I will add too, that we have begun architectural design and engineering for these two projects you see in front of you here. And so we will eventually start seeing invoices roll in, so this will let us reimburse those costs back to the project.
It'd be good sometime, before we get too far down the road, once these designs come, maybe have a work session so we can see what's up, because I don't know where we're at in the process.
Well, and there's nothing to show at this point, but we absolutely we'll bring all that to you guys.
Good point.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Chapman?
who's performing the design services? Is that, I don't remember that coming before us.
On the recreation center and the pavilion, this is a combination team, Boudreaux Group, architects, and land plan, landscape architect.
Okay.
The Greenway has been done so far with other monies with Goodwin Mills Kaywood out of Greenville. Their engineering design firm.
Either one of those come.
Yeah, so GMC, about a year ago, we had them do preliminary engineering for the Greenway.
Okay.
And then we've continued with that preliminary engineering moving forward under professional services.
Okay, but that wouldn't come back before us?
No, not at this point. It's the ability for the procurement now for professional services up to $50,000, so it's less than $50,000. And they are one of our on-call recreation engineers.
Okay.
So, really quick. So what this does tonight is give us the ability to fund the research, and then if we ever bond, when we do bond it to do the project, the hospitality tax will be reimbursed the amount that we.
That's
right. Okay. With that, make a motion to do this.
First by Mr. Horvath. Second by Mr. Lockwood. Mr. Stewart.
Comment. Kind of getting back to, Mr. Chapman, I know we have, I guess, the council approved the professional fee up to $2,000, but just please be cognizant that even though that this company that we probably never used before, we're using them on this project, don't let it come back to bite us. And because typically we like to use companies we have experience with. I know we've got burned in the past over the past years. I just want to make sure that I haven't seen any of the work that they've done in the past. Don't recall it coming before any recreation committee or anything. So, that's on you guys.
Yep. No, absolutely. And we certainly echo that concern. We're not going to enter into any agreements with anybody who does poor work.
Well, we thought that for a lot, but we dealt with Neil Prince and everybody else who's reputable. We came and got burnt on a lot of things in the past before you got here.
I will tell you, GMC, I'm familiar with them. They did work at another city I was at. They also did work with Andrew in Columbia County. They do almost all of Anderson County's civil work, and they do a lot of work with them. Anderson Regional Water System, they built the ozone system for them as well. They become quite a large company. I remember when they, a small engineer firm that's grown, but when they opened their Greenville office and they had 2 engineers, now they're up to some 33 engineers there now. So there's a lot of municipalities in our area that have been using them, and they've been quite pleased with their work.
I just comment on that. Normally in the past, those things have come before us, especially for big projects such as $8.5 million worth of work. It normally comes before us for us to review or ask questions, get comfortable with it, and move it forward.
I say what we'll do is heard you about the work session, and when we get a little bit further along with the conceptuals, we'll do on both of these projects. We'll do a full work session on that, and it'll give you the direct opportunity to ask those engineers before we move to the farther step of developing the construction documents. Any questions that you may have, and we would appreciate your input on that.
Thank you.
Very good. Last item is,
You need to.
I'm sorry.
That's
Y'all
all right.
talk so much that I'm just teasing.
First and a second.
We got a first and a second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving right along to the last item, Ms. Martin. Item 5, ma'am, you still up.
Okay. All right, excuse me. So on this one, it's similar to the one we just did. It's just a different type of financing, so it's a separate resolution that we're requesting approval of a resolution authorizing the city of Anderson to reimburse certain expenditures made prior to the issuance of an installment purchase revenue bond not to exceed $5,500,000. During the budget meetings, we talked about the parking needs and the possibility of having a Church Street parking garage using the installment purchase revenue bonds to pay for this facility. Issuing this resolution allows the general fund to be reimbursed for costs incurred prior to the final financing of the installment purchase revenue bond. The not-to-exceed amount allows for potential changes in cost estimates pending final engineering and design. I know I say in the winter of 2019, 2020, actually, I don't know for sure exactly when we plan on closing, but based on the amount borrowed, we are estimating the annual debt service to be about $331,000 on a 20-year borrowing at 4%, and these payments are included in the general fund budget. We have debt service rolling off in 2021. Again, we're not, hello? Oh, there we go. We're not committing the city to doing any borrowing, financing, or anything. We're just requesting the resolution so that the general fund can be reimbursed for any cost incurred prior to the issuance of debt. So with that, I request approval of this resolution authorizing the city of Anderson to reimburse certain expenditures made prior to the issuance of the installment purchase revenue bonds not to exceed $5.5 million.
And let me take this opportunity too, while we have a moment, to update you on the progress here as well. Is that we would like to, we have a work session planned, and we're looking at a date. I want to see if it looked good for everybody, and you don't have to say yes or no, but October the 2nd, to be timely. I've been aiming for the first Wednesday of the month on these work sessions to go over the hotel development, parking garage, the conceptuals on that. We have just preliminary conceptuals, the 3D modeling conceptuals. Hasn't moved any farther than that right now, but we're getting to the point that it needs to move fairly quickly. And then also a possible streetscape for that road too, to finish it off, Market Street. And so that's one thing we want to do with you guys before we continue to move this forward. Is there any questions on that real quick? And there's one other thing I want to address.
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Already contracted for the design services of the parking garage?
No, sir.
Okay.
What we did is we had a believe it was $5,000 arrangement to put the conceptual together, and it just again architectural conceptual, so we could use that to illustrate it to you, but we haven't moved forward past that. And then if there's no other questions on that, while Mike Burns did make the trip from Greenville, we're trying to get him moved to Anderson, but anyway, still working on that. But I would like him to take just a moment here just to talk about the STEP and the installment purchase revenue bond, because it's a little bit different than your GO bond or your revenue bond for hospitality. And so if you could just talk about steps and what you'll see coming before you and the in the order of this. Mr. Burns, if you have a moment.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen, Mayor, members of council. Yeah, Mike Burns, pleasure to be here before you. For this installment purchase revenue bond financing, it's a little different than what the city has used in financing means in the past. Your general obligation bonds or revenue bonds or lease purchases. Installment purchase revenue bond, it will involve the creation of a nonprofit corporation that is technically the issuer of the bonds. And then the city would purchase the asset that is ultimately constructed, in this case, the parking deck, would purchase it over a period of years, and the city could use various sources of funding to make those installment payments over time, whether it be general fund monies, it could even be short-term general obligation bonds that make each year's worth of payment. But so part of the process will be establishing a nonprofit corporation that will be closely affiliated with the city, and entering into, there'll be various agreements, a base lease, an installment agreement, and a trust agreement that kind of sets forth the rules for the borrowing. But that is that's further down the road. The purpose of this resolution, really truthfully, is just to preserve the ability for the city to reimburse itself ultimately with the proceeds of those bonds. and for those bonds to be issued on a federal tax exempt basis if that's the route that the city chooses to go. The purpose for these reimbursement resolutions really is to preserve the city's ability to reimburse itself and also have the bonds be issued on a federal tax exempt basis, which the bottom line is that means a lower interest rate than you would otherwise get with a taxable borrowing. So I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Questions?
I'll add too that while this is a first for Anderson, most cities our size and larger already have this in place, and so they run many bond packages through that entity. The city does control that, just a financing mechanism that gentlemen like Mr. Burns are good at placing these and coming up with these bond issuance. So what it does for us is preserve our ability and our debt service cap for your general obligation, which if your general obligation bonds obligation or puts them, to put it short, puts a mortgage on the entire city of all your revenue. So it protects you from the creditors from doing that. And it preserves that bond mechanism for essential functions such as public works complex, if you wanted to go that way, our public safety, a fire station, and so forth. So this financing mechanism was built around the idea of being able to protect that source, not put an entire mortgage or the creditors on the entire revenue of the city, but to limit that exposure.
Mr. Harvey?
Quick question. Thanks for coming over.
Certainly.
The 4% is just a general idea of a ballpark. And what kind of time frame do we anticipate? That may be a David. I mean, is it 3 months, 6 months? Are we looking at doing this bond in a year from now?
It's about 3 months process, and so we're looking probably December first year.
And what is, do you know approximately what the rate is now?
I do not. The city's financial advisor might have that. I'm the bond attorney, not the.
Right, so, that was just a place marker, 4%. It's very conservative. We're hoping it would be lower than that. But, we put in more of a conservative amount to have the most we would probably pay.
You know, I sell bonds and I hadn't seen a 4% general obligation and any revenue bond.
Correct.
In quite some time. I mean, it's
I'm giving you the worst case scenario.
2.8 to 1 point. You know, that ballpark. I mean, I thank you for, we've always done that.
I'm extremely conservative.
But I didn't know y'all issued one lately that, you know, to get a idea of what the rate is.
No, the last capital lease we did was 1.82.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I'll say, if you remember, Mr. Hartman, when we did a big refund recently, and our financial advisor, with y'all's guidance and the ordinance, provided a range. So when we went to market, we were able to pull the trigger on that and take competitive bids on it, and within a variable range, and it came out really well. We saved a lot of money doing that. On this one, since it is a 5.5 million, it really would probably be a bank placement, meaning that instead of putting it on the bond market itself and save costs from that, it'll be you're taking bids from banks from it, and so that's how we see this taking place, and that's how actually the lease purchase is done too. You take bids from the banks. So.
Good question. Anything else? It was information, Mike was giving information in regards to.
We will need a motion for the resolution.
Yes, but any other questions? Okay. Have a motion by Mr. Harvin.
Second.
Second by Dr. Thompson. Any further questions? I would just say that the projects are bigger and they require more skill on the financing side and being creative and ultimately keeping the city's bottom line in place. So I commend you for stepping out there and doing that. It's important. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Administrative briefing.
Okay, just real quick for the benefit of the public. tomorrow, September the 10th, there is Seat Sits, Councilmember Lawford's Neighborhood Watch Community Meeting. It's 6:30 p.m. at the Recreation Center. On Thursday, there is an Anderson County Municipal Association meeting at 7 p.m. It is being hosted here in Anderson. On Friday the 13th, we're having a movie night in Carolina Wren Park called Captain Marvel at dark, and I've never seen that before. But on Tuesday the 17th, the Westside Community Coalition meetings 4 p.m. at the Westside Community Center, and on Thursday the 19th, the Southeast Anderson Task Force 5:30 p.m. at Hannah Westside Career Campus. Our next council members meeting is scheduled for September the 23rd at 6 p.m. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Do have one other item. I actually saw it in the paper this morning. Tomorrow between 5:30 and 7:30, Grace Church is having an open house downtown for anybody that wants to come by. And there used to be an old ACT theater, so anybody that wants to see what kind of renovations they've done, they've got an open house from 5:30 to 7:30 tomorrow. So I know that's a big corner of our downtown, and I think it's going to be an asset to our downtown. So just want to let everybody know about it.
Thanks.
It was an advertisement I saw in the legal section, just saying they were having an open house.
And I will say that I've been through it, and it is well worth going through. They did a phenomenal job with the building, inside and out. I mean, it has architectural decor, the deco theme, and so it's well worth it if you haven't been through it.
What's the hours tomorrow again?
5:30 to 7:30.
Okay.
It's wide open right now because it's on Sunday, probably. So, wide open. I don't know. I mean, I'd be interested to see how it plays out with a lot of different things. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Not having anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Have a first by Mr. Newton, second by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Yeah.